Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into the book of 2 Kings, chapter 14, actually.
Right, it's a historical account looking at the kings of Israel and Judah.
Exactly. And our mission, for this deep dive is really to unpack what happens with two specific kings here, Amaziah of Judah and Jeroboam II of Israel.
And to see what timeless wisdom we can pull from their stories, right? Things that might even apply to us.
That's the goal. We're talking things like justice and mercy, the danger of pride. That's a big one here.
And God's faithfulness, decision-making, sovereignty. Lots packed in.
Definitely. These aren't just old stories. They've got, well, real insights for today. Okay, let's kick off with Amaziah.
Okay, so Amaziah of Judah, he takes the throne. He's 25 years old, and the text says he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem.
And generally, he did what was right in God's eyes.
Yeah, mostly. One of his first really notable actions was how he dealt with the men who killed his father, the previous king.
Ah, yes, the assassins. What did he do?
Well, he executed them, which was expected. But the key thing is he didn't execute their children.
Okay. Why was that significant?
Because it explicitly says he was following the law of Moses. You know, the principle that fathers aren't punished for their children's sins and children aren't punished for their fathers, everyone for their own sin.
Right. Individual accountability. That's quite a statement early in his reign.
It really is. It shows a real commitment, at least initially, to justice tempered with, well, the law's own mercy.
So things start off pretty well. Then comes the military stuff.
Yeah, he leads Judah to this big victory over Edom, down in the Valley of Salt.
A decisive win, wasn't it? Like 10,000 casualties for Edom.
Huge victory. And they captured the city of Selah, renamed it Joktiel, a moment of, real triumph.
Okay, so far so good. But I sense a but coming.
There's definitely a but.
Yeah.
This victory seems to have gone to his head. Pride creeps in.
How so?
He gets bold, maybe too bold. He sends a message to Jehoash, the king of Israel up north.
The message being...
Pretty much, come on, let's face off, like a direct challenge.
Yeah.
Let us look one another in the face.
Wow, okay. After beating Edom, he thinks he can take on Israel.
Seems like it. And Jehoash's reply is, well, it's classic. He uses this parable.
The thistle and the cedar.
That's the one. A little thistle asks to marry the daughter of a mighty cedar, but then just gets trampled by a wild animal.
So the message is, you're the thistle, Amaziah. I'm the cedar. Know your place.
Exactly. He even says it plainly. Look, you beat Edom, fine. Your heart's lifted up. Enjoy the glory, but stay home. Why stir up trouble that will only hurt you and Judah?
A really direct warning. Don't let success make you reckless.
Crystal clear. But Amaziah, he doesn't listen.
He goes for it anyway. Oh, dear.
He does. They meet for battle at Beth Shemesh, and, well, it goes badly for Judah.
How badly?
Total defeat. Amaziah himself is captured. Jehoash marches on Jerusalem, break down a huge section of the city wall.
Oh, wow. Like how much?
400 cubits, it says. A massive breach. And then he plunders the temple and the palace, takes gold, silver, vessels, even hostages.
So a complete disaster, all stemming from that pride after the Edom victory.
Pretty much. A harsh lesson in ignoring wise counsel and letting pride dictate actions.
What happened to Amaziah after that? He didn't die in the battle.
No, surprisingly, he lived another 15 years after Jehoash died. But his reign ends badly, too.
How so?
There's a conspiracy against him back in Jerusalem. He tries to flee to Lachish, but they hunt him down and kill him there.
A rough end. So his son took over.
Right. Azariah, who's also called Uzziah, he was only 16. And he later rebuilt Elath, which is a note they add.
Okay, so looking back at Amaziah, what's the takeaway for us, you think?
Well, it's that stark contrast, isn't it? Starts with commendable justice, following the law, but then pride leads to really rash decisions with devastating consequences.
Yeah, it's a warning about how success can be, well, dangerous if we aren't humble, and maybe about listening to advice.
Definitely. And maybe trusting God even when things go wrong, because defeat was also part of God's sovereign plan here, perhaps to humble him.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift north now to Israel and Jeroboam II.
Right. He starts ruling in Samaria around the 15th year of Amaziah's reign in Judah. And he reigns for a long time, 41 years.
But his record isn't quite like Amaziah's initial one, is it?
No, not at all. The text is blunt. He did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. He continued the sins of the first Jeroboam.
The idol worship, the high places, breaking away from proper temple worship.
Exactly. That whole legacy. So by the scriptural standard, he's not a righteous king.
Okay, so you'd expect things to go badly for Israel under him, right?
He would. But, and this is fascinating, the opposite happens. at least militarily and territorially.
Really? What happened?
Jeroboam II actually presides over a period of major expansion for Israel. He restores its borders significantly,
To what extent?
all the way from the entering of Hamath, way up north, down to the Sea of the Plain, the Dead Sea. It was a huge recovery of territory.
Wow. So an evil king brings about this great restoration. How does the text explain that?
It's quite profound, actually. It says, "This fulfilled a prophecy given by the prophet Jonah."
Jonah, the whale guy.
The very same. And the reason why God allowed this success through Jeroboam is given very clearly.
Okay, what's the reason?
It says, "For the Lord saw the affliction of Israel, that it was very bitter. There was not any helper for Israel. And the Lord said not that he would blot out the name of Israel, but he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam."
So it wasn't about Jeroboam being good. It was about God's compassion for the suffering people of Israel.
Exactly. God saw their desperate situation, their bitterness, their lack of help, and he chose to intervene and save them despite the king's unfaithfulness, using him as the instrument.
That really underscores God's mercy and sovereignty, doesn't it? His plans aren't totally dependent on human goodness.
Absolutely. It shows God acting out of his own character, his compassion, even when the people and their leader were deep in sin. Jeroboam eventually dies, and his son Zechariah takes over, but that period of success is credited to God's mercy.
So the application there, it's about recognizing God's grace even when things seem, well, contradictory.
I think so. It challenges us to see God's hand even in situations where leadership is flawed or where blessing seems undeserved by human standards. It points to a God whose mercy is bigger than our failings.
Okay, so we have these two kings, Amaziah and Jeroboam II. Very different stories in some ways, but maybe some common threads.
Definitely. When you put them side by side, you see these core principles about God and about how we should live.
Like the balance of justice and mercy we saw with Amaziah initially.
Right. God values justice, adherence to his law. But then Amaziah's story is also a huge warning sign about pride. Success doesn't guarantee future success if humility is lost.
And Jeroboam's story reinforces God's faithfulness and sovereignty.
Yes, powerfully. Even when people are disobedient, even when leadership is corrupt, God's compassion can still be active, and his larger purposes for his people can still move forward. He doesn't give up on them easily.
So how does understanding all this, from way back then, strengthen our faith today?
Well, I think it shows us that God is consistent. The same dynamics we see here, the consequences of pride, the necessity of justice, the surprise of mercy, the reality of God working through imperfect situations, these are still relevant.
It reminds us that God's character doesn't change. He's still merciful, still sovereign.
Exactly. And it can give us hope, knowing that even in our own weaknesses, our own mistakes, or when things around us seem chaotic or unjust, God's bigger plan and his mercy are still at work. His faithfulness endures.
So, kind of wrapping up the key takeaways from 2 Kings 14, we've got the call to act justly, but also mercifully.
The serious trap of pride, especially after success.
The need for careful, humble decision-making.
And underlying it all, God's persistent faithfulness, his compassion, and his ultimate sovereignty over events.
Powerful lessons. Okay, here's maybe a final thought for everyone listening to reflect on.
Go for it.
Consider a time in your own life. Maybe a time when you felt the sting of pride leading to a mistake, or perhaps a time you received an unexpected blessing or saw something good happen despite really difficult or undeserving circumstances. How does hearing about Amaziah and Jeroboam II maybe offer a new lens on that experience? How might their stories shape how you approach decisions moving forward, or how you understand God's, involvement in the messy reality of life?
That's a great question to ponder. How does this ancient history illuminate our present faith and walk with God?